Somebody want to sing the intro?
Have you heard our intro?
Yeah, it's
And welcome to this week's BGS podcast. I'm John Futscher, and with me is
Greg Giles.
and Ryan Mallette.
and we got a lot of stuff going on here as usual. We actually have a jam happening tonight, so we're gearing up for that. We're going to cram ourselves into the space once again and try to make some crazy things in 48 hours. Should be a lot of fun. But right now what we wanted to get into was Dark Souls 3 just came out, and that's a perennial favorite around here, the Dark Souls series, that is. Everybody seems to be pretty hype about it, and they like a lot of the design decisions that goes into these games. So I'm interested to hear some of the thoughts on the new one.
Yeah, I think you fall into two categories. Either you play Dark Souls and you like it, or you're tired of hearing about it. And it's one of those two. Yeah, and I fall into the former. I played Dark Souls and I liked it. Actually, probably my favorite game of all time. Not probably. It is the first one, at least. So, yeah, 3 came out a little over a week ago, and it's as good as the first one, in my opinion, at least, in different ways. There's some stuff it doesn't have that the first one had, but it has some other stuff the first one doesn't have.
Care to elaborate?
Yeah, no.
Nah.
Good talk.
So, I guess it's like Dark Souls is an experience, and that's the core of what makes it special, I think. Every part of it, the story and the gameplay and the interactions, the story is just, this is something that's going to be repetitive. This comes up all the time, and I probably say the same things every time, but to reiterate or not, the story is driven by what you do, how you interact with the world, and how you read the world. And that means literally sometimes item descriptions, but also there's a lot of implicit story from the environment. So they never come out and say what's happening. They just talk to you like you kind of already know what's happening, because they're all like in the middle of it. So they don't come in like, oh, you just like, or you don't show up and they're like, hi, like,
You are a brave wizard.
Yeah, like, hello.
Sent to save the land.
Yeah, like give you a bunch of context in a conversation that doesn't make sense for like a routine conversation, like that's all not there, which I love, because it's one, it sounds more natural for one. Two, the story, instead of being like a thing that's just kind of told to you, or told at you rather, it becomes this thing you unravel. So and that's like the thing that game does best is the way it peels back its layers. First of all, it's deep in a lot of ways. It's there's all these nooks and crannies with exploration, so you can miss a lot of stuff. There's all kinds of ways to play it. There's infinite combinations that are all really well balanced. And there's all these story elements that get, the veil is just slowly and methodically lifted, and you start to be like, wait, this thing just happened, and then I remember that other thing that happened, so I wonder if this is happening. And then, sometimes it's a thing you can go test out, and it turns out to be true, and you're like, holy shit, that was... you kind of put things together and then you test them and then it works or it doesn't. And usually, though, it'll work. And so you feel really empowered and you feel like delighted, like it's a nice surprise. So the game is very like, it's deep, and it's the pacing that makes it special, and the pacing and the detail of the pacing. And so to me, there's really like two angles of Dark Souls. One is the gameplay, and one is the environment, ambiance, story. And that first one nailed it better than any game I've ever seen nail it, and is the bar as far as I'm concerned. And two, biffed it harder. Biffed it pretty hard on the story environment part, in my opinion. But probably improved the gameplay, but that's not enough for me in those games. I need both to a large extent. And I might go back and I played the second one for a couple hours and then I was like, I don't like what's going on here, and just moved on. And so I might go back and play the second one after the third, because I feel like the third is, now that it has all the stuff that I was missing, more or less, it doesn't do it. It still doesn't execute on that story part as well as the first, but almost, and good enough, really. It's definitely lacking in imagination sometimes.
Is that just because of how much you already know from the previous games?
It's hard to say, maybe. That could be part of it. I don't think so. I feel like the contrast in areas is not as strong as it was in the first one. So you get these, like, thematic areas. You get, like, in the first one, there's, like, Undeadburg, which is, like, a town. Then there's Blight Town, which is, like, just this poison swamp village that's just kind of gone to shit, and it feels completely different. And then you have, like, the catacombs, and that's complete. Like, the feel of it is so different throughout. And you don't get that starkness in this one, which isn't to say the areas aren't distinct, but you just don't ever feel like you're in a... You just can't... It just, like...
Too much of the same.
I guess. I feel like what it does would be great if it hadn't already done it better. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like 3 still has this wonderful, awesome world that is pretty amazing, but I feel like they just totally crushed it in 1. So it's like, I just guess I have to recognize that 1 did that thing better. But 3 still has it. It feels like the environments, like, you just feel like the textures are a little more repetitive. Like, it just doesn't feel as...
There's less variety.
Yeah, but it's weird. It's hard to explain. So that's another thing that brings me, like, another point I want to make about this series is it's the definition of the sum is more than its parts. And, you know, when somebody says a game hits above its weight, like, Dark Souls does that so well that, like, it, like, has all the stuff a game has, but, like, the way it puts everything together, it's just like nothing else. Like, the execution is, like, they do things like what they do really well in that game is they're really efficient with their design in a lot of ways. One example of that is I feel like they don't force a narrative through the medium. Like what I was saying earlier, like, where there's, like, a story isn't, like, told at you, right? And they don't try to, like, and instead of, like, there are some inherent shortcomings to games that some games try to, like, explain away or draw your attention away from or justify almost. So, like, one of those things is, like, time, right? In time in games, like, your experience is telling you, and the game world a lot of times will tell you that you're in a day in a place. Except you look around and everybody's just walking in circles. You have the same conversations with people. Like, you know, time doesn't quite, even though you're supposed to be experiencing it like a day and you're in a place that's real, I mean, games just can't be that. Like, they have to exist sort of in an indefinite state a lot of times and stuff. And so Dark Souls actually takes that shortcoming and kind of uses it to its strength. So what it does is it'll take the repetition that's sort of inherent to games like that and build it rather than hide it. So you get this, like, incredible sense of, like, eternity and infinity in these games. Like, the best example of that I can point to is there's a blacksmith, and, you know, because this is, like, a dream nightmare world of, like, magical and stuff, you know, and this is an example of, like, what you see in another game that kind of breaks that immersion, and that the games, I think, will try to hide that this game plays up is the fact that there's, like, a blacksmith and he just sits there hammering a sword eternally. In Dark Souls, that's what it is. That guy is almost in limbo or, like, in hell. He's a blacksmith and all he does is hammer that thing, and it's for infinity, and he knows it, you know it, and that's what's happening. Whereas in another game, that's what's happening, but you're supposed to believe like he's not really hammering
he's just
infinitely,
working
right?
for the next hour.
Exactly.
Until I leave town.
Or yeah, it's like you're supposed to believe like there's more he's doing. He's got a life and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But this guy doesn't. He's the blacksmith that sits there and he hammers it down. And so that's just like an example. Dark Souls does that consistently in other ways. There's other things it'll do where it leans on, or it makes it kind of folds like sometimes like a flaw back into a feature almost. And that's where I think that's what I think makes that game works as well as it does, is it doesn't try to fight the things it can't do. Instead, it embraces them almost, So, and that's just sort of like, you can find a lot of examples of that throughout the game where, it's just like, the game is just really good at conveying that sense of like heaven, hell, and eternity. And it's certainly in creative ways, but also by using these sort of like foregrounded decisions in game design and sort of using them in a new way, or really, or not just just not trying too hard to do anything with it, and it just kind of works on its own, right? That's, I guess, what and then like that efficiency and that just the way they do that it goes through like all the systems, and I couldn't really even point them all out myself, and I don't want to sit here and go through all of them, but you would see it if you played it, I think. Another thing is like the way this game handles space is really interesting. Like there's no square inch of space that doesn't feel relevant. Even if there's nothing there, there's so much potential when you're approaching a space, like that everything feels relevant. And it's interesting because I feel like it gives the world a weight that you don't get in other games, and it really just kind of brings everything in tightly. The best way I ever heard, well, there's a couple ways it does that. One is that they're really good at hiding things, so they kind of know what your assumptions will be, and so like the obvious or the assumed, you really can't take anything assumed. You always have to go check every corner, every little bit, because a little corner might lead you to a whole different zone with items and everything, and all you just like didn't go all the way to the end of this little path that looked like it was done, and that's like completely intentional. And or maybe at the end of that path was like the best item in the game or whatever. So there's no dead space in this game. Like there's no space that's unused, even when it's not used. You always go check it out because you don't know what's going to be. There could be a bend, or like it's just like really good the way they like bend the ground and use the environment to sort of shroud things. Like even as much as I've played these games, they still get me sometimes. The other thing is that every piece of it is so intertwined that you always feel like you're, again, I guess it just feels like the world is really real because everything connects, everything's so interconnected, and there's no wasted space. The best way I've ever heard it put was like in a review. Somebody said like the space extrudes around like from itself, and that's like, if you don't know 3D modeling, like extruding's when you grab a face and you pull it out. So it's like a additive way of modeling instead of a subtractive way. Instead of like cutting away faces or planes, you grab a face and you start pulling it out. And that's, that kind of highlights like there's two ways. Like there's the Bethesda approach, which I feel like is, here's a whole bunch of stuff, we just plop it down and we'll put it together somehow, where I feel like Dark Souls feels like it starts from like a tiny core and then just gets pulled out and pulled out and pulled out, so that you know, it's all, everything's carefully considered. Every little nook and cranny is just like, you know, very intentionally present and used, and you know, in ways that maybe you'll never experience, but it certainly does. So those are the like underlying concepts that you'll find also in gameplay that really make this game like really fun to me. There's just this like really good sense of like wonder and discovery, and those are the most important parts of Dark Souls to me. On top of that, it's a fucking fun ass game to play. Like it just, the weight of the weapons, the way you attack, the way, you know, just the way it plays is really fun. And to have that on top of this really nice, this crazy world, I mean, it is just, it's hard to really, it feels like every other game falls short when Dark Souls does what it does so well. But you know, I guess it's not for everybody at the same time. And yeah, I like playing it.
So is it like the same world between the three of them, or?
No, 3 is weird because it is all the other worlds put together, it feels like. Well, it kind of is. I mean,
It's very
it doesn't
video
feel
gamey
like
of them to do.
Huh?
It's very video gamey
well,
of
this
them
is
to do.
supposed to be like the last one.
Oh, really?
That's the rumor, yeah. So I feel like they did that. One is to kind of celebrate all of them maybe a bit.
Gotcha.
But that is a kind of video game thing to do at the same time.
Like, have all the worlds combined now.
Yeah, like now it's the best world. It's our world. I don't. It doesn't feel lazy to me.
That's good.
And it doesn't feel, you know, the callbacks don't feel like, oh, remember that thing that was so cool? Don't you like this game because of
I
that thing
love
in the
that
other game?
thing.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like that at all. It does. It feels like seeing old friends almost, and I don't mean like literally the characters necessarily, but just some of the tenets of the older games. They feel familiar. They're there, kind of as they were, without any real like. They don't try to obscure it really, and it just I don't know. It feels reasonable. So I have a suspicion that also the fact that it's all the old stuff put together is gonna play a part in the narrative in a way. I'm not sure where it's going just yet with the story, but I feel like there's a reason like that this game is going to be like the apocalypse of all of that stuff, and so it's all being included because it's part of the story that these worlds are colliding. So there's that. So yeah, they're definitely like different worlds, but there's a lot of the same characters. And one thing Dark Souls does do is they tend to reuse like zones. So in Demon Souls, Dark Souls, and Dark Souls 2, basically you have the same zones just redone. So it'll be like Blight Town is in Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1, and I think Dark Souls 2, I don't know. But it's all done differently. Like it's always like a little bit of a new take on it. But you basically have the same zones redone, even though they're different worlds. And
Lazy devs.
Yeah, lazy devs. But what's cool on that end is you can see the iteration. There's always between these games, there's always a big step up. So when they do rework them, there's so much more going on that it doesn't feel. It feels like, okay, this only can feel as good as it does because it's the second time it's getting done, right? Like this is the second time they've done this zone with this gameplay, and that's why it plays as good as it does, you know.
Do you think, taking the fact that number 1 is your favorite game ever out of it, I guess my question is, have you played it since playing the 2 newer ones at all?
Yeah, I beat 1, and then I went to 2, and played it a little bit, and just didn't like it. It didn't have any of that stuff I was talking about before. It was certainly like a good game with good gameplay, but there was a lot of like, the space didn't tie together well, and there was a lot of wasted space, which was like really annoying to me. Like there'd just be vast spaces of nothing, like that you would run into and nothing would happen. You're just like, what the fuck is this here for? Like it just really shattered the experience, you know. And so like after a couple of hours, I went back to 1 actually, and played it halfway through again, and then kind of hit a wall in this part that I couldn't beat. The first time I hit a wall, I hit the same wall the second time. I kind of couldn't get through this one area, and I just didn't go back to it for whatever reason. But yeah, when I went back from 2 to 1, yeah, it was clear that I wasn't just like remembering 1 fondly. 1 was much better. I haven't picked up 1, and I'm actually curious to do that for a lot of reasons. One is that this game is so visually stunning. The detail of it is crazy. Like, there's just like, it just feels like every little brick is modeled. Like,
in 3?
In 3, right.
Yeah.
And in 1, that game is 6 or 7 years old now, maybe. And it was on PS3.
Oh,
it was a pretty early PS3 title, really. And I gotta imagine it's gonna look like shit when I go back to it, and it's probably not gonna play as well, because 3 is a lot faster. It's one of the things that makes it good.
Yeah,
it's really quick.
I'm curious. I haven't really played them. Like I told you before, I've only done like an hour on the first one, but I'm wondering if it's worth going back to it, or if I should just jump ahead, or...
Yeah, this is a thing I haven't made up my mind yet on on what my recommendation is. 3 will build you into the Dark Souls experience way better than 1 or 2 will. Well, 2 really never gets there in my opinion, but 1 is a little too impenetrable, and I think if you know you can stick it out, go for 1 first, because I think it's better to go through them in order, and I think 1 will be a richer experience if you do it first. 3 is good enough on its own, and 3 will ease you into it. Really ease you into it. That game 3 doesn't get hard for quite a, like, only today this morning I was playing a bit before I came in, and I'm over 20 hours in, and it was the first time I got to a zone, and I was like, this place is, I don't even know if I'm supposed to be here, but then there was nowhere else for me to go. It's definitely, it just got hard, right?
Gotcha.
And 1 gets hard pretty quick. 3 doesn't get hard for a long time, but it eases you into the difficulty a lot better. It introduces you to the concepts of what you need to be doing as far as leveling up and developing your character. All of that is a little bit more handled a lot better, and 1 is almost to a fault obscured in a lot of those
really
ways.
obtuse
experience. Like, to the point where, like, when I look at this point with 1, I've basically, like, I want to know more about what's going in it, but I can't afford to spend any more time just sitting there with 1. So I look up most of the stuff. The first time through, I never looked at it, and that's the thing. You want to. My suggestion is also to not look almost nothing up. With 1, you'll want to Google a guide that'll be like spoiler-free intro to Dark Souls, because there are a couple of things you need to understand about that game that it's like, it's not going to kill your experience to read about it online. In fact, you'll probably enjoy the game.
Like, if you turn human, that someone might just jump in your world and rob
and rob the shit out of you, right? Yeah, exactly. Also, like, what does turning human do for you?
Yeah.
And you can turn human up to 99 times at once. Like, and what does that mean? There's all this stuff that you really almost can't figure out, and I don't even know how people did figure out, to tell you the truth. And it's kind
online message boards,
stuff like that. It's just taken a lot of people talking about it for a while to get all these, like, systems exposed.
That kind of comes to the crux of it for me, because I haven't played these games, so I generally just stay out of the conversations about them, because I'm ignorant of the games,
and
so I'm not going to try to.
Dude, no.
I'm not going to sit here and try to talk like I know what I'm talking about when it comes to the games, but this inevitably happens. This kind of dichotomy of, dude, the game is so beautifully thought out and brilliant, and every piece in the game is there for a reason, and it's so thought out and brilliant, and it's all there, and it's dense, and nothing is wasted. Oh, by the way, you got to go watch some videos and read some tomes and talk to some dusty old guy to actually understand how to play the game, because the game doesn't tell you any of this stuff. The UI is completely undesigned. There's no explanation of any of the systems. It's all just obtuse nonsense, and really the only way to figure out is just poke at it forever. And anybody who's like designed stuff would be like, that's terrible design. That's the worst thing you can do, is to turn off all of your player base by not explaining anything.
Well, one, that, like, you have knowingly grossly exaggerated how that works. Two, yes, I mean, it is true that there's... I mean, first of all, I would say you can beat the game entirely, and if you're, like, skilled enough as a video game player, like, I mean, abstractly video game player skilled, like, you know, you can beat this game without probably looking anything up. I don't think you would need to, and I think you would still have a good time. If you want to get the most out of it, yeah, there's some stuff you got to look up, and when I say, like, every game's got its flaws, right? Like, no matter how good a game will ever be, there's going to be downsides to it. There's going to be shortcomings, and that's the shortcomings of this game. So, yeah, it's true that everything's masterfully, wonderfully, granularly, detailed designed. But it's also true that it's not a perfect game. So, yeah, there's a couple things, especially in the first one. And I can't... 3 seems to do a better job of introducing that, all the concepts. Also, though, I came to 3 already knowing all the concepts.
Yeah.
So
I
don't know.
It's a different experience then.
Yeah, I can't say that. Like, I don't think 3 will leave anything out that's crucial, but maybe it does, but I don't think it does.
In fairness to having to look things up, too, I don't know if it qualifies as poor design if it's intentional, because a lot of the excitement behind stuff like this is kind of that chase and that mystery of that. I mean, that's why Minecraft is so compelling to an extent.
Right.
But Minecraft
like,
doesn't obscure all its systems.
Oh,
right? Like, it
about,
clues you in on how to do things and how the world works.
No,
for a long time it didn't. And they grew towards doing that a bit more with, like, the progression system they have in there now. But even before that, like, it was still such a compelling experience because it was just like, I'm in this place. I don't know what to do. I guess I'll figure it out.
There's no way you can play much of Minecraft without looking it up. It's impossible.
Well, in the very very early Minecraft, it was not intentional. It was they were just building the systems, and people were playing these betas online.
Yeah, and maybe there was
no design behind it, because there was like, yeah, we built this thing. If you didn't read this message board, you wouldn't even know it's in there.
Maybe it wasn't it wasn't like the intentional design, but it was still a very compelling experience, even when I wasn't looking things up.
Sure, I mean, people forget about freaking instruction manuals, right?
Yeah.
You know, when I was a kid, you get a game, comes with a nice little box, instruction manual, you know, back in my day, that kind of stuff.
Grumble, get off my lawn.
Yeah, and there was an instruction manual that told you how to play the game and all that, and you could read it on the ride home from the store because you weren't driving because you were a kid. And then you sit down and you can play this stuff. So it mitigated a lot of the need for tutorials and stuff, the things that kind of get a bad rap these days.
Well, yeah, and I mean, the tech wasn't there to really support extensive tutorials as much either. You know?
Right. Well, and also, you know, you get complicated games that they would just have a big fat manual that was explaining all the systems. But if you read through it and you put the time, you could figure out how to do these things. And they would ship with those on purpose. And people are like, no, it's stupid to make them go look at something else. We'll put it in game. And now it's kind of fallen out of fashion to do it in game. They're like, stop taking me out of it and trying to teach me stuff.
Yeah, and maybe it's just a response to it kind of going overboard with that for a while.
The hand-holdy, like, take you out, don't let you play the real game for 3 hours because you're in a tutorial.
It seems like
that's really bad. I'm not even going to argue for that.
It seems like Dark Souls is designed around, like, that response, though, being like, we're just going to completely back on this and just be like, nope, we're not going to give you anything and go ahead. That doesn't necessarily mean it's good, but I understand like that being a compelling idea, though.
Yeah.
No, I feel like Dark Souls itself, and again, just seeing the phenomenon from the outside, I always look at Dark Souls as more of a response than a vision. It's more of, this is a response to what we see out there. Like, we don't like tutorials, we don't like easy games, we don't like games that do cutscenes and shove the story down your throat. And so they went down that road as opposed to just being like, hey guys, in a vacuum I came up with this idea that we're going to do this thing and not teach anybody nothing, and we're going to make this world, and we're going to make it really hard. And
there are tutorial elements. I mean, there is in all of the games in the beginning, you are fighting, and then there's notes on the ground you read that says this button does this, this button does that. So there is tutorial. And it's very short. It's about as short as you can make a tutorial in the way that they're done now. But it is there. Also, I would say maybe that's true. I don't think it is because the game is so consistent and rigid and disciplined in its own rules that it's hard for me to think that it's a reaction rather than a vision, because I don't think you can be so deliberate without having beliefs.
Well, I guess that's what I'm saying, is that the beliefs and the vision came out of a reaction. They didn't come out of, this was 1983, there was never a game like this, and I made this game with nothing. This game was made by people who were making other games, and they saw where the industry was going, and they were like, nah,
that's actually
I don't want. I've got a vision of what a game should be, and I don't like what the rest of them are doing, so I'm going to make it like this.
Well, there was an interview shortly after Bloodborne came out with Miyazaki, the guy from the guy that basically is responsible for these Dark Souls games, not the animator. And when he was young, he couldn't read English, but he would go to the library and look at books and basically see all these pictures and have to figure out what was going on himself. And that's basically that's where it all comes from. So I think from that experience you get a lot of things. One is he experienced these pictures instead of reading, right? So he was already kind of like thinking about how do you take a place and experience it to maybe just one. Maybe that's my only point. I thought I had
but environmental storytelling is really powerful, and it's great. I like to see things moving in that direction. I'm not trying to say that's not good. I'm just more, like I said, outsider looking in. I feel like a lot of the rules come out of when I hear them in the context of games as a greater whole. It seems like they stand.
It seems contrarian.
Very contrarian. They very much seem like we have all these games that are like this. We're not going to do any of that. We're going to do it like this instead. And because of that, it feels like that kind of reaction. And now it's become its own thing. And it's not to say that reaction didn't spark a vision and a belief system that was then expanded upon and very well considered and designed after that. I guess my take is, does it feel like Dark Souls versus, do you look at things, because you say like it's the bar, right? Do you think you look at Dark Souls and you're like, it's Dark Souls versus the rest of games? Or is it Dark Souls there's so many other games just like Dark Souls just does it better? I guess that's what I'm saying. Is it so
I think Dark Souls is the logical progression. Like, I just think it's the next step. I think it's just like it just I guess that's my answer to that.
It doesn't cheapen it if it's a reaction. I'm not trying to say that.
Yeah,
well,
it really doesn't.
It doesn't.
That's to me though. But that's what
a lot of art comes out of a reaction to what was done before, and they see what's wrong with it, and they want to make it better.
At the same
it doesn't
point,
cheapen it even slightly. I just like trying to understand, because
if it's a
seems like
reaction,
almost everything in the game seems like it's the anti. It's like a lot of games do this, we're this. A lot of games do this, we're this. There's too many of them for me to not be like it's
their
contrarian.
multiplayer system is completely original. There's nothing like it. So there's that, and also like, him coming from that. Like, to me, if it's contrarian, what's special about it is almost incidental, and I don't feel that about this game. I feel like what's special about it is a vision that this guy has, and his ability to his sort of like steadfastness and discipline, like sticking to his guns in the execution and consistency. So like when I was saying before, it hits above its weight, right? Or it's more than the sum of its parts. And if it is that, I just don't think... I just feel like there's just like Dark Souls just seems to know what you are, like, and where you're coming from and where you're gonna go and how you're gonna go there. and it's always ahead of you, but it always like
right. And I guess
it just feels like special, you know. And
well,
I don't want it to be contrary.
It feels like a vision.
But I guess like
yeah.
well, and visions can come out of these things, but I guess like just like you're saying, like it knows where you're going, so it doesn't go there.
Well, but I think that comes out of play testing.
Fast, like hardcore vision, like these things are exactly like this. Then it's a little. I mean, you where the players are going to go before you do like the 50 rounds of play testing and the original system coming up and building it out the way that they did. It came from people who had deep knowledge and opinions on other games, right? Like you don't predict where a player is going to go. You don't understand a gamer's mind and like, oh, you're going to go here. I know you're going to look over there, so I'm going to put it over here.
Yeah.
You don't do that unless you've played all those games yourself. You
Right.
understand how those things work,
Right.
and purposefully saying, I see you're going over there. We do it over here.
Yeah.
Like and so I guess I hear that a lot. I guess is what I'm saying is they play with that expectation, and I find, and we've talked about this 100 times on many other games. I think Ryan brought it up a long time ago about Undertale, about how when he played it, he felt like he always thought it was going to go here, and the game knew he thought it was going to go here, so then it went there, and it played with those expectations to create something much more interesting an experience that he would if they just played it straight. Like it would have been boring because it's nothing new there. The art came out of playing with the expectations of the player.
I guess the difference there, I'm going to go ahead and preface this that when it comes out of my mouth, it may not make any sense.
It's a whole podcast.
Best preface ever.
and that goes for everything to the rest of my life. To me, Undertale was about the subversion, where Dark Souls, like the whole point of Undertale is, oh, we subverted, neat, right? Like you thought it was gonna go there, it went here, we did it like that, and then, but Dark Souls instead uses subversion to compel you to think differently, and it's about the thinking, it's about the change in thought and the new way you're gonna approach it. They subvert to push you, not because subversion itself is what's cool. You know what I mean?
I don't feel that Undertale.
I only played a few hours of it, but everybody told me that they're like, yeah, it does just what it's
I
doing.
think it actually.
So this is great. This is good because
it effectively.
you just beat this game.
I did just beat this game. Yeah, it fucking surprised me a lot actually. Yeah. And I don't think it surprised me until like the very end of it, and that's when it started to sink in how much this actually was effective at exactly what you're saying.
Okay.
And making you like rethink.
I think
many of these different situations.
Also, not you, Ryan, but
the other Ryan who praised us on our Goaty podcast.
Yeah. It's like his favorite game ever.
Yeah.
He said the same thing. He's like I was really digging it. I was digging it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was kind of, I never didn't like the game, but then when it ended, I was like, shit.
Holy shit.
Like,
yeah.
And then he's like, that's when I realized Toby Fox is a better developer than me. Like, way better.
Yeah, and everybody, just because he not only did most of the art in that game and development, but also all the music as well. And that score is incredible. It's super good. But anyway, I don't know if we're off.
Well, no, this is
so why don't you
for the discussion
talk about
this one.
Where Undertale went? We can circle back.
Yeah, I've pretty much made the points I want to make about Dark Souls. I don't want to talk about anything specifically because again, that game is the experience. So it's like best if I say, I really can't say much more.
Yeah, and I don't know if I can sum up Undertale very well without saying something very similar because it's really just like I was feeling that exact same way. I went through it. I was like, oh, it's cool. It's like a throwback to SNES stuff. I even walked away from it for a bit. I went and finished it like a week ago, even though I started like months ago. I started after our podcast, after Ryan was going over it. And I was like, okay, yeah, it's cute. I get it. Like, just what you were saying.
Yeah.
But then, like, once it all kind of hits home and you're starting to, like, see how it all kind of comes together and really does kind of fuck with you in different ways, and especially just how it ends, it's just like, oh, like, everything just turned on its head completely, and this game is just really effective at like subverting things in different ways but not as much of the, oh, look at this is cool, as you kind of felt it was for a long time, but more so just kind of like, oh, like, here's this compelling experience at this point now. Like, here is this drive of, I don't know, like I said, I don't know if I can sum it up better than like...
I mean, yeah,
just trying to stay spoiler free, but like, trying to, yeah, it's hard.
I can tell you, it gets fucking crazy. And then I watched some of the other endings. There's definitely several different endings to this game, and they're all just completely bonkers and different as well.
I'll have to go back to it, because it really, that game just seemed to me to be like being clever and succeeding, but then also being like, you see how clever we are? Like, we're so clever.
Yeah, like, they do that at first, and then it starts to break away from that for a bit, and it's consistently surprising, which is nice, and that the ending was just super surprising, and how everything came together. It's like, oh, okay. Well, all that there.
All right, well, I guess, I guess I should go through and play it.
I'd love to, I wish I could sum it up better. I'm actually, like, I've been thinking about it a lot, and I'm kind of at a loss for words at the moment.
It's kind of funny, because the way that you talk about it, I hear that from pretty much everybody who's played it, that they don't want to tell me what happens or the exact things, the interactions and different systems that come into play, and how they mess with your expectations to create something new. And it sounds all interesting and intriguing, and I just, I'm the outsider looking in on Dark Souls and on Undertale that I need to come back to and play at some point.
Greg and I
both of these games benefit the most from being alone.
Greg and I are just really being incredibly vague today. Just experience it, man. It's great.
Yeah.
You just gotta get into it. You gotta spend enough time with it.
Yeah, usually I don't mind spoiling a game, but I feel like both of these games, people would be losing something a bit.
Yeah, there's something special there that, like you and I, John, have failed to crack on Dark Souls, whereas you have failed to crack it on Undertale.
Undertale, yeah.
And yeah, I mean, that's compelling for sure. Question. Dark Souls 1. When you were saying earlier how the game kind of, it teaches you, and then you start to experiment, and you get into different ideas, and then you're combining them, and like, hey, maybe this could work, maybe this would work.
Yeah.
How long do you feel it was before you started to, like, have that happen to you in Dark Souls 1?
A long time. Dark Souls, first of all, I'm not that good at video games. Second of all, I'm not very smart.
I'm not smart there.
I think a lot of people probably pick up Dark Souls a lot faster than I did. So it's hard for me to say. A while. I mean, you kind of got to know
that concrete term of a while.
I'm intrigued though, like in that as a concept. Like I think that's really interesting. So I want to like these games. I just haven't yet.
Once the thing is you've got to learn the language of the game.
Yeah.
The game is very consistent, but it's so different, and it's because it's consistent, but it's very different and it's implicit. So you have to understand. I anticipate when I can get through things pretty well now, because I know. I feel like there's a possibility set list, that the game will kind of. I know that the game punishes, basically like greed. It'll punish greed. It likes to dangle things in front of you and let your greed sort of be your downfall in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of situations I'll walk into and I'll be like, you won't see any enemies. Like it looks like the room's empty and there's just a thing out there, and you're like,
shiny carrot
I'm going to walk around this room for like 5 minutes before I go grab that thing. And usually you'll find a trap or whatever, and you can, so... I don't know. It's a really gradual process. You kind of, like I said, you've got to learn the language of the game, so it takes a long time for you to understand the possibilities of combinations and things that you can even try. Because, you kind of sometimes you just stumble on them, and that's how you find out there's even this layer of combination you can even mess with, and. Sometimes, it just takes you really knowing the systems, and so it's a long time before you really get that part of it. Some of it's obvious though, like light is good against dark, fire is good against organics, and some of that stuff's really obvious. What's a little not obvious and something that like I always expected that to be more limiting, you know, where it's not like light and fire actually throughout the whole game are good. Like usually those things are pocketed to zones or whatever, and they are more effective in some zones than other. But like lightning just kicks ass on everything throughout the game. And like that's a thing you don't expect, right?
And lightning is sweet.
It's just another example of how that game does things differently.
I'm gonna make some force lightning today. You just planted the seed.
Somewhat.
Some force lightning.
What's that?
Like the Emperor.
He doesn't know Star Wars.
Wait, what?
Every time Star Wars comes up.
Star Wars.
You know Star Wars? No, I don't know
Star Wars is the Dark Souls of movies.
Gotta learn the language.
Yeah, just learn the language, man.
But so yeah, it was a while, and I will also say it took me a really long time to get into Dark Souls. Like the first time I bought the game, I returned it. I played it.
Your favorite game of all time.
Yeah.
You returned it.
Yeah,
I did that.
I
did that
with
with Mass Effect.
Yeah,
and
crazy.
I fucking love that game.
You end up liking it, right?
Yeah, I played an hour of it. I was like, I don't get this.
Yeah.
Returned it. Bought it 2 years later. This is amazing. This is the best story I've ever had in a game.
To be fair, Mass Effect 1 was pretty
that
rough,
one was
rough around the edges.
Yeah. It is.
I
still loved it. But
I still love it
even when
too.
it was released, it was considered to be rough, and now it's moments of it are
I don't
unplayable.
even recommend
I,
play it
so-
anymore.
I got
So
you
you could
everything.
have argued this with other people that like Pismarov and some other folks that really like no, you got to play all three of them.
No.
At this point, I'm kind of like play 2 and 3.
Play 2.
Yeah.
I would say go 2-1.
Well,
2-1, 2-3.
here we
I
go.
don't think you can go back to 1.
The first one has the best story, though, by far.
This first one has the smallest story, so it keeps it very contained.
That was another game that really surprised the hell out of me.
That said, like you can actually play that whole game, like play the main story campaign and finish it in like 8 hours if you
really?
if you like sit down and just go.
I didn't actually.
There's
know
only
that.
3 missions in the game, and then like a.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah,
and then
you
a
have
finale. like really the only.
I think there's one more before the finale.
The game exploration and all like this being like building a team and like flying around in the universe, that's all side crap that you don't have to do any of it.
Has everyone beaten Mass Effect 1 here?
I beat all 3.
Yeah.
You beat it? Alright. I gotta say one thing. Incredible. Spoiler alert. But we're beyond that.
Yeah, way beyond. That's like a 15-year-old game. Or
One of my favorite things ever to happen in a video game was when did you guys go Paragon or Renegade completely?
I usually go Paragon.
I was pretty much all Paragon.
I would assume you also did the same thing. Convince Saren to kill himself at the end rather than having to fight him.
I've done that.
That was one of the most incredible moments in a video game.
Yeah, because that
Did you do that too, John?
So I don't remember if I got him to kill himself. I remember fighting him.
Yeah,
like,
so
having
when he's on the
something.
platform thing and you have to like fight him.
There's 2 stages to
Yeah,
it.
you can skip that fight if you convince him like he's like bad. It's like, no man, I know you're a good dude. You need to stop being a bad dude. And he's like, you're right. And he fucking kills himself. It's great. Then you still have to fight the little spider version of him at the end or whatever.
Oh yeah,
but,
that's the flying spider.
Yeah.
Yeah, the pain in the ass.
because then he's totally like fucking Reaper.
But you skip
or
like
whatever.
half the fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just like, holy shit.
Probably did, 'cause
I did not think that would work.
I played the first one pretty much full on Paragon, and I played in Mass Effect 2. They introduced the interrupts, which I thought was brilliant. Where when you're having conversations with people, they would throw prompts on the screen every once in a while to be like to just interrupt them and
punch them in the face.
Yeah, punch them in the face or interrupt them and be like, no, calm down. Like you know, they have good guy and they have Paragon and Renegade interruptions, and so in Mass Effect 2, I was pretty much almost all Paragon in like an actual talking scenario. But if I got a Renegade interrupt and somebody was being annoying to me, I took it.
Yeah, those are always good. The interrupts are always like good.
Yeah.
But when you would talk as a renegade, it would just be like, you just sound like a dick.
Yeah,
like,
you're a
right,
jerk, man.
Unlikable asshole.
You're a jerky jerk.
So I played through that game pretty much all Paragon with taking the interrupts, like kicking the guy out of the elevator or like headbutting
punching
the
that
Krogan.
lady in the face.
Oh, the
punching the reporter.
Yeah.
Like you know those.
Oh, I definitely hit her.
That was surprising.
That
Yeah,
was.
those-
I didn't
expect that was what was
Right,
gonna
yeah, well
happen
that's kind of funny too because it's like even like the dude with the guy in the elevator and he was kind of being shady with me or whatever and I got the renegade interrupt and I thought I was gonna like smack him and you kicked him out a window.
Yeah.
I was like, well, that escalated very quickly. I thought it was, yeah, and I thought
escalated or elevated.
Oh, boo.
Wow.
But with the reporter, yeah, same thing. I thought I was gonna just be like, just because not
You're
every
like,
renegade,
I don't have time for this.
not every renegade interruption is a physical one. Sometimes it's like, yeah, go screw yourself. And you walk. I thought it was gonna be like, yeah, shut up, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Just like,
And it was like, no, it's like, bam.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa.
The reporter, yeah, she's like running her mouth, and you think he'll just be like, "All right,
Shut up."
bitch," or something like that. But he just punches this lady in the face. She's that.
And I just remember being like, whoa, I did not want. I was not trying to do that.
Yeah.
she called me out for it in the third game. Then I think I hit her again. Then I think it was
You just kept doing it. You know, it's like, you know,
Commander Shepard, the worst reporter, woman basher in the galaxy. Piece of garbage.
Only one reporter. She was a jerk.
What a piece of garbage. Oh, they did some great callbacks there. But yeah, so anyway. Long story. The only Paragon check in conversation in the game I could not do was the end of Mass Effect 3. You have pretty much the same scenario with the Elusive Man, where you can convince him to kill himself.
Yeah.
It's at the very end of the game. If you can convince him that he's
2
bad.
or 3?
3.
So I forgot that happened with
really
Saren, because that was something you could happen with him, where you finally confront with him.
I forgot what happened
He
with
shoots
him.
Anderson, and then he's basically got a gun on you, and you can. There's a talking sequence, and there's a Paragon check for like convince him or whatever. And that was the only one in all 3 games in a conversation, like a blue option, that was grayed out for me. Like every other one that I had.
Is it possible? Or is
It's
it
possible,
purposely?
absolutely.
Oh, okay.
But I
All
think
right.
it was because I took a bunch of Renegade interrupts, and I didn't do all the Paragon.
Punching people in the face.
I didn't take
time.
all the Paragon options that were presented to me, like at all times. But I was pretty much very, very high. I was high enough Paragon to get every single one of them in the game, like as an option. Like I had that rating up to that point, except for that very, very last one. And I talked to people who did play Paragon 100%, and they're like, "Yeah, I had the option." And what happens? Oh, he shoots himself when you convince him he's bad. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like, what happened to you? It was like, well, I tried to convince him to chill out, and he pointed a gun at me, and I shot him in the face. And I much prefer my version. I enjoyed shooting him myself.
forget.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
don't take that away from me.
Yeah, I only just to that. I just want to. This isn't really a story that matters, but yeah, in 2 there was one I couldn't do, which was Liara's daughter. When you meet her and you like go back to her apartment.
Miranda.
No, Miranda is.
Oh no, that's
yeah.
the other woman.
She's the fat booty
I think
Australian.
I think
that game will frame so many shots with
Morgan.
Miranda's
No, that's Dragon.
butt.
God damn it.
What?
Yeah, it would.
It would
No,
just
yeah.
like be in the side of the shot, just like her butt. Like
I'm trying to think of Liara's daughter's name.
I don't know, but you.
No, not Liara's daughter. It's Samara's daughter, isn't it?
Who's Liara?
Liara
There's the
is.
Asari from the first game.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
No, it's Samara. She's the.
Yeah.
Justicar from
Yeah.
2.
Right. Yeah, so her daughter,
Yes.
who's like this bad person, and then
Think
you go
it
back to
was
the
what
hotel and
happened.
she like tries to hypnotize you. I played through that part 3 or 4 I beat that game maybe 3 times, but I definitely played through that part at least 3, maybe even 4, and I can never get the Paragon response in that one. It drives me crazy, and I don't know.
There is a crazy version of that scenario.
I think I know where you're going. I
That
knew this one.
it didn't happen to me. It happened. I heard about it after the fact. After I'd already played through the game 1.5 times. I heard about. You can do a thing where you basically take her side.
Yeah.
And you let
her
kill your
Samara.
companion.
Oh, yeah.
And she'll take her place
Yep.
in your
that's
crew.
fucked up.
Yeah.
And like pretend to be her, and everybody treats her like it's her, but you know that it's you know that it's her daughter or whatever.
Oh,
they
so
call
she
it.
literally just acts.
I think she just takes her place, but only the 2 of you know.
That's-
So it adds like the subtext to like there's more dialogue options and stuff.
That's kinda interesting.
It adds like a subtext to the character from the rest of the game, where you know that she's like this crazy thing that like kills people on the side.
Yeah.
Why would you let her be on your ship?
Some people just play shitty, you know.
Yeah.
Actually, when I replayed it the second
People
time
play shitty.
around, I tried to go full renegade, and I found it very hard to actually do.
Yeah. You gotta be a real jerk.
I found I had to like every time go against my instincts. So
Yeah, you
like,
have to
in
be, like,
conversation,
Extremely racist and
just to constantly pick like the down and right option to take the red one,
Yeah.
and just to be a jerk at all times. And I didn't like it.
How'd your face look?
It was pretty cool, actually. It is kind of cool.
That's the perk, for sure.
It is kind of cool what they did with it, where you get these crazy glowing scars that form all over your face, and the deeper you go into Renegade, your guy turns into this kind of like almost crazy, like, you get these weird, it's like lava vats and stuff on your face. It looks crazy. I didn't really like that either.
Because the Reapers got you, man.
But yeah, I tried to play through it as a second character, and I only made about halfway through the 3. I tried to play through with a jerk character, I only made about halfway. It didn't grab me as much as playing my main quest.
Yeah. I tried my best to just pick what I thought on most of those, but I ended up mostly Paragon.
Yeah, same deal. I mean, I always looked at it like if somebody was a piece of crap or something, like I would...
Yeah, I'm tough when I need to be, but I love my friends. Garrus is my homeboy.
Call it the Han Solo version.
Exactly.
You're not 100%
Actually, I'm a softy
good guy
on the ship, you know?
Yeah, you're not 100% good guy. You can be, you can shoot somebody if you have to.
Oh, that reminds me of Star Wars.
Greg doesn't know Star Wars. It's just going to be like a meme under the thing. It's like anytime somebody says something, Greg's like, oh, it's like Greg doesn't know Star Wars.
It's a fun little segue into Mass Effect territory for a bit.
Oh, yeah. I'll always take a segue into Mass Effect.
Yeah.
But actually, a segue into Star Wars is... last night, I was messing around with the new Oculus SDKs and the new Leap Motion beta, the Orion beta that they put out that enhances a lot of the hand tracking in VR. So, if you're unfamiliar with this, it's basically a little system that was developed by Microsoft, and their initial version of it just sit on the table, and you're supposed to put your hands over it, and you could like play a piano and swipe things and whatnot. It was kind of something like the original Kinect, where it had really cool tech in it, but nobody had found a good use for it, so nobody cares. So it actually turns out in VR, it's very useful and it's very cool. To mount it on the front of a headset, and then it looks out in front of you and it can pick up your actual hands. So no controllers, no nothing. It picks up your hands in front of you, and but it was good, but it was slow, and it would have a tendency to if you closed your fist or you kind of moved your hand, it had a tendency to throw up gang signs and just really make really weird mangled finger messes that were it didn't work. That they rewrote the whole thing, and now it's a lot faster, and it can do a lot of position estimation based on last known positions and whatnot. And basically what that translates to is if you close your fist and point it away, it knows that your pinky and your ring finger are underneath the back of your palm, so leave them there and don't like fling them out and like make them do weird things like it used to do. So they actually really they fixed that quite a bit. It works way better now.
That's cool.
They also introduced some gesture tracking that you always had to roll your own previously if you wanted to do anything where you picked something up in VR and grasped it. You had to write all that code yourself. Now there's new kind of pinch stuff where it recognizes your thumb and your index finger as like special operators, and it allows you to very easily like reach out in VR and do that over something, and then it recognizes that as like an event or in like an action that can be taken. So I was playing around with that last night, and I integrated it into my lightsaber demo that I built with the Razor Hydra on the Millennium Falcon deck, blocking laser shots back with a lightsaber. And I put that in there with it. So now on the right hand you have a lightsaber, and your left hand it actually picks up your skeletal hand like in the scene. And now when the thing shoots at you, you can block lightsaber shots with your hand, like your actual hand. And yeah, it was way easier. It was a really pain in the ass to get it working, but once I got it in, it's very natural. Like it's like.
Can you send the lasers back yet?
No, you can't reflect them. You can reflect them with the lightsaber, but you can't. You just block them like Darth Vader in Empire when Han starts blasting at him. You just put your palm out, and they just explode on your hand. I want to do like a force pull, but you guys mentioned lightning earlier, and I might have to do like a little recognize a force lightning, shoot lightning out.
Is that force lightning in Star Wars? If you don't know, it's when you shoot lightning.
Yeah,
out of
no,
your
there's
hand.
force lightning in Dark Souls too, so I know about it.
All I know is Dark Souls. Well, that sounds really cool.
It is a cool little thing. I want to keep playing around with it. There's nothing really too deep to go with it yet. It's more just like an interesting new way to interact with stuff. I'm really intrigued by the controller-less scenarios because actually using your real hands in a scene goes so far to creating presence. That when we eventually reach a point where we could do something with using your actual hands and doing kind of something like room scale, like VR, where you don't need a controller, you really just need a headset. That's where, you get that full immersion where you can kind of do everything.
It's going to be nuts.
Well said.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm looking forward to trying to integrate a bunch of these things together, hopefully.
And then sell it to Disney.
Yeah, right. No cease and desists.
Yeah.
None of this stuff is Star Wars branded that I do. It's just Star Wars adjacent.
Just in a Millennium Hawk ship.
It's low poly enough that unless somebody told you what it was, you might not recognize it.
I'll recognize it. We'll give it the Greg test.
The question is, can a lawyer recognize
It's
it?
there you go.
No, see, it's an homage. It's not, it's an homage. I'm not trying to make Star Wars stuff. And this is all just for my own personal demo testing,
exactly.
so I'm not selling
Learn
any
a
of this
bunch
stuff.
while doing this.
Yep.
Hopefully they don't sue us over this podcast.
I wouldn't even mind if they sued us. I'd just be happy somebody listened to it.
Buddy.
So, I heard you played Her Story.
I did. You also did?
I played it, and I talked about it a bit on this podcast. I don't remember what I said, so...
I remember, if I recall correctly, that you played it with Ingrid,
Yep.
yes, and you guys played together.
Yep.
And used that as kind of... It's almost like a co-op game that you created for yourself.
Yeah.
It's not really there. It's not meant to be, multiple people per se, but there's nothing about the game that doesn't let you play with other people.
I hear that's an interesting way to play
It's
it.
really... Yeah, it's better. I mean, you bounce ideas off each other, and one of you will be... I was thinking one thing, and she'd be like, I bet it's this. And I'd be like, oh, yeah, it's definitely that. Holy shit, it's that. Yeah, and then, vice versa. So it's fun to play, maybe even... It was definitely easier that way. What did you think? Did you play through it? Well,
yeah.
I mean, it's a little open-ended in the end. Like, you kind of decide when it's over a bit, but...
Yeah, I found all videos and everything.
Oh, really?
I got every achievement.
Wow. I didn't
Every
find
single
all
one.
the videos.
Yeah, it took a little bit. It was a lot of guessing of... Eventually, I just resorted to putting in small words. I'm like, I got this.
So, let's review how that game works.
Yeah, so you're put in front of a computer that pretty much came out of like 1994. So it's like running like Windows 3.1 style interface on it.
Yeah.
And so you just put in front of it, and there's a little program where you can just search the police database. It will only allow you to bring up 5 videos at a time. And so you just search for words, and then you watch videos, and you try and piece together this.
And these clips are like anywhere from a second
to like 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Yeah.
But they tend to range in the 10 to 30 second.
Yeah,
range,
they're generally pretty short.
Yeah.
Did you play this at all, John?
Nope, I'm just aware of it through conversations we had the last time.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And it's actual video.
Yeah, it's all completely FMV.
Yeah.
One actress. There, you do not get any of the. Oh, and so the premise is that someone has been murdered, and then you're just watching these videos to see. So right when it puts you in front of this little database searcher, the first word that already exists in the search field is murder, and you're like, intriguing. So you watch like the first video, she's like, my husband's missing, and then you watch like there's 4 of them there, and you watch like the 4th one, she's like, I'm ready to talk to a lawyer now.
Yeah. It does give you the whole like, it gives you the beats, like the main beats of the plot, and then
it sets the hook.
That was a super good setup, I felt.
Yeah, it was good.
Just because the way that it works is that the way you search for videos, these are words that are pulled directly from dialogue in the video. So therefore, it was intentional to make these 4 have the beat of the only time she mentions murder. So therefore, it is crawled and queried.
Right.
That these 4 just kind of sum up, at least, or set up the intrigue of this story. It's like, good.
And then you kind of are directed by words or things they mention.
Yep.
You're like, oh, so sister. She said she had a sister, so let's look up that. And then,
Oh, she did not say she had a sister.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That was a bad example. But,
spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Oh no.
I mean, that comes up pretty early though. Like,
yeah,
that's one
no,
of the
it
first
does.
things
Yeah,
you figure out.
because at first you're just like, oh, what's going on? So it looks like, and I feel like we're just gonna spoil things.
Yeah, we should probably
throw a
spoiler alert.
Spoiler.
Continue.
Spoiler. Go away. Yeah, so at first you're just like, oh yeah, pretty standard. Oh, I wonder if she killed him. What's going on? Because that sets you up right away to just be like, ah, like, if she wants to talk to a lawyer, obviously she's a suspect. And then eventually you're just like, this isn't the same person. These are two different people.
Yeah, you start to notice
very subtle things in the way they're acting.
Yeah, the way they're acting, definitely. Like one of them is, so what they do is it's like these twin sisters, and then, you know, so like at first when they started doing these interview tapes, they were both going in, but they were not, nobody mentioned that there was a twin. They were just like,
swap places.
They would just swap places, and you would not know because you're the, you know. But these inconsistencies started coming out in the videos, and then so it kind of, the cops figure it out, sort of in the videos, and then like, you know, so the later videos, it's clear, like it's they're
calling her out for it.
Yeah, like the later videos are it's accepted, and in the earlier ones you're kind of, and that's a really interesting sort of.
Yeah, and I think that it really it lends a lot of credit to her performance. Playing these two individual characters, but two very, very similar characters with just subtle differences. I think that was one of the most compelling things about this game, really. I'm not sold on the twin idea. Personally, I think it was a multiple personality disorders type situation, because it seems like they get to the point where they're starting to understand this person, and they're letting her kind of take the reins on this investigation in a lot of ways. For example, she pulls out a guitar and starts playing a song in the middle of, like, you know, being interrogated. It does not seem very practical. My guess is that they are kind of onto the idea that, hey, she might have some sort of multiple personality disorder.
Yeah.
Because she was very obvious in certain ways, too.
I feel like there's a thing that comes out that, because I did think that too, and I was thinking that, but Ingrid was like, no, it can't be that because of this, and I don't remember what it was, but
there's a few things that definitely just say, no, it can't be this because of this, except my problem with that is that you get all of your information in this game from her. Yeah. So she could just be an unreliable narrator, and I'm like, okay, like, that's enough for me. Yeah. Because she's trying to sell it because she believes in these people and these characters that she is and she embodies.
See, that's another thing that's like, you know, helps with, it's a good thing in design, is like, if you don't spell everything out, and this is like definitely true in Dark Souls, the gaps kind of get filled in, right? Like on their own, like the things that maybe, like, that could have been a plot hole. Like, that could have been a plot hole. Maybe the writer just fucked up. But it's also a valid plot interpretation from a viewer standpoint. Yeah. So I feel like when you don't explain everything, you allow a lot more. And you're like, the experience is more solid overall if you don't try to justify and explain every detail.
That's kind of what I was getting at earlier when I was saying that's part of the intrigue of stuff like this. Yeah. But there's definitely a very fine line you can walk sometimes, and
sure, yeah. Sometimes things are something like, there's definitely stuff like that is obscure because it doesn't know what it's saying, you know, which is different, and that's
I'm not necessarily going down that path. I'm just more so when we were talking about how Dark Souls. Go get that checked out. Dark Souls. Is potentially a reaction to, or at least to an extent, some kind of take on the over tutorializing of gaming. And maybe that's too far over. I think there's a line. What I was thinking about when we were talking about that earlier, I was going to mention, it makes me think of like the differences between the original Zelda and like Link to the Past, and how much less, like, Link to the Past doesn't really hold your hand. But there's a bit more when it comes to feedback in order
to... direction.
Yeah, in order to not only guide you, but also let you know, hey, there might be shit over here hidden or something, like... And I think that's a finer balance than, say, the original Zelda has.
That's another reason I would say that Dark Souls isn't so much contrarian, because it's actually just Zelda on steroids. Like, it's just design choices of Zelda, just pushed really far and like amplified.
Like more the original or more
More like the Link to the Past, like the SNES era.
Yeah, because going back and playing the original, it's really obtuse in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
and
there's nothing there. You get a sword and you're in a world.
Yeah,
which way do you even go?
Yep.
Yeah,
exactly.
You have no idea until you.
And that was the intent, obviously, but that was like a new way of doing things too. So it's like how can we improve on this over time?
There is some direction, but it's too buried. Too like I've seen breakdowns of the original Zelda where you look at the environment and there's actually arrows and things like that.
Well, there's certain spots
you're supposed to be like.
Yeah, there's certain screens because that game's made up of screens because it's old school.
Right.
There's certain screens that just kind of there's really only one way to go, or the other way is clearly a dead end.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of it that's just
most of it.
A lot of it's just open world, like overworld, and I don't even think that they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna make it so these people don't know which way to go.
No,
they're more just like, we built this world, they'll figure it out.
Yeah,
like, it's not.
It's
not. They didn't consciously say, no tutorial. They're just like, we built this world.
Yeah, and
we built it because that's all we can do right now.
It's understandable because that was a new way of doing things. You know?
Right.
They improved on it over time. Because even just, for example, you go in a dungeon and you're supposed to push a block. There's no indication you're supposed to push a block in the original Zelda. At least I don't believe so. But then I think like Link's Awakening, and probably in Link to the Past too, they would actually put like a darker tile on the floor or something, for example, just like indicate, hey, you should put this thing over here.
Well, some of them were secrets too. A lot of the game was also predicated on secrets.
Yeah,
and, like,
but I mean,
even
even in the first dungeon, I believe there's a puzzle. There's just 4 blocks, and one of them you need to push over, and a door opens. And I think that's it. And there isn't really a way to know that without kind of just walking around the room and just pressing on everything.
But that's what people. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what people did.
Yeah,
those games.
Well,
they know that there's a way forward, so they're like, okay, how do I get out of here?
Exactly.
Because it's all about framing, right? Because they would show you a gated door.
Yep.
And you can see that there's no other way out of the room.
Yep.
You can tell that it's not a key door.
Yep.
So something has to be in here that flips it, or there's a switch somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. I agree completely.
So those systems were kind of laid out, and they would dangle that in front of you. It wouldn't just be. If it was, so there are some places in the original Zelda where you push a block to the side, and there's a little staircase underneath it, and it goes down into like a fairy cave or something like that. And those are secret rooms.
Yeah.
Like they were there because they know people are going to mess around with these things.
Yep.
And they want people to be able to, that was a nice little reward for, hey, I'm going to try this thing. And 9 times out of 10, it didn't do anything.
Yeah.
But that one time, it's like, sweet, check this out. And so it makes you keep doing it. Whereas if none of them reacted to it, you would just stop. You wouldn't do it anymore. You wouldn't probe the system. You have to kind of dangle that carrot of, if you try it, there might be. And they kind of set up that expectation through things that you have to do to get through the game, like popping switches and open doors. Like they show you, like if you move this block, sometimes it doesn't tell you, just like press against stuff. And then later on when you find like a secret, you feel awesome, even though they kind of primed you to just check stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's exactly Dark Souls. I mean, Dark Souls is Zelda. I mean, that's a point I should make. It's Zelda, just like on steroids.
I like Zelda.
And I mean that I mean that in like in terms of gameplay and also game logic, like all the stuff you're saying, that's all core tenets of the Dark Souls experience.
Zelda rules.
That's the takeaway.
Yeah.
I mean, really though, it's always worth mentioning. Like I feel like Nintendo in the '90s had it fucking down in a way that we still haven't fully realized for the most part in the mainstream gaming. Like they just understood games are an experience, and like that's the important part, and that's what all things flow from that. You know, and not only understood it, but like nailed the execution of it.
I mean, yeah, a lot of that stuff from that era, just the launch title for the Super Nintendo, like Super Mario World, is like,
one of the all-time greats.
Yeah, you can go. People still play that constantly.
Yeah,
if you fire that up somewhere, people will walk over and play it. Like, yeah.
And what was that? Even just simply a year or two after Mario 3, which is also incredible. Like, they just churn them out, man. Yeah.
Well, then it took 8 years to make another Zelda or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, it actually was not as long back then, but yeah. Yep, it's good stuff.
I mean, it was Link to the Past, 91?
93?
92. I don't know. It was still like 6 years until Ocarina of Time then.
There was a pretty big gap, and that was the jump to 3D. And that
Although Link's Awakening was after Link to the Past, I believe.
Link to the Past and then Ocarina of Time.
It was.
And then Majora's Mask,
Yeah.
like shortly thereafter. But
Yeah.
building up the engine and stuff for Ocarina of Time, like that was the biggie. Like,
It was
that was
built
the one.
off Mario 64, actually.
Of course. Because
Yeah.
Mario 64 was the biggie. Because
Yeah.
again, you go back to what they were doing back then, they pretty much invented the analog stick
Yeah.
and 3D camera movement
Yep.
and exploration of 3D space and how you frame things, show things to the player, but at the same time give them control of the camera and how do you actually handle that. Like, this was all completely new ground back, in 2D. The player doesn't move the camera around and rotate it around them. There's only one view always. So how do you handle like letting the player look in every direction? It's the same problems we're running into VR right now. It's another level further, where it's even beyond just 3D and like using a controller to move a camera around. Like, now you have all your content and the person being able to look in any direction, see how far away things are, how big they are. Certain motion stuff makes them sick. Like, how do you,
Maybe
it's
just
the
see a
same.
Nintendo VR. They'll figure it out.
I wouldn't be surprised if they're messing with something.
Yeah.
They've got to at least
Yeah.
internally have a project. I would be.
Oh God, yeah.
They
I
probably
would assume
had.
so.
I mean, the 3DS is a lot of the problems
Yeah.
that the way the 3DS approaches that stuff is a lot of VR solutions, really. Yeah.
They've been thinking about it to an extent.
Well, I wouldn't have been surprised to find out that there was classified internal R&D departments
Oh,
working on
absolutely.
VR. in
They
the
gotta be.
80s.
I'm sure
I
they're
mean,
working on.
They came out
Oh,
with the
sure.
they came out with the Power
Virtual
Glove,
Boy.
which
Virtual Boy.
the
yeah.
Power Glove, which couldn't really. It was like it made this promise that they couldn't deliver on
It's so bad.
until the Wii. The Wii was the realization of the Power Glove.
You know, and I was thinking about it too. Even just the
Interesting.
Vive. I'm like, I wonder if the Vive would be the same if the Wii didn't exist. Like just
possibly,
because
I mean-
the Wii really like brought about. I mean, it actualized motion control.
Yeah.
Like, for better or worse, like it wasn't great all the time, but there's some good stuff on there for sure.
Well, the
And,
Nintendo
like,
titles.
Yeah,
That's
and then
always the thing.
So
and
many
then-
people want to shit on the Wii because it's like the graphics aren't that great and the motion controls aren't that interesting sometimes.
It was
It's a
rudimentary
little bit
and-
late. There's latency involved with them and
Yeah.
whatnot. But at the end of the day, like, they innovated a whole new space again.
Yep. Again, yeah.
Yeah, they tried the Virtual Boy in the night. They couldn't do it with the tech at the time.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they have internal stuff going
Yeah,
on, like
I
all
mean,
the
we'll-
companies seem to right now. I
There'll
don't think
be
there's a single big player in that space that doesn't have a solution coming out in the next couple of years.
Yeah, they should be doing something around E3, right? With the NX or whatever.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows what they're gonna do? I mean, as far as like, I feel like Oculus, for better or for worse, was trying to kind of be the Nintendo of VR, kind of being the first one to kind of kick it mainstream, like the NES did, kind
Yeah.
of solving some of the problems first. You look at things like Lucky's Tale, and it's a VR love letter to Mario 64. I mean, that's all that game is. It's like they're
Mario
basically just
64.
trying to turn Mario 64 into a VR experience.
Have you played it
And-
all?
Yeah.
How was it?
It's cool. I
I
don't
heard
know
it
if-
was really pretty good.
yeah, it's really pretty and it looks nice and it's an interesting little experience. I don't know if it would grab me to play it through the whole way. The weird thing about it is that it's built to be this 3D VR experience that kind of brings in third person and it writes some of the it's like Mario 64. They're kind of writing some of the rules of how the camera works because you can't whip the camera around like Mario 64.
Yeah.
Like, but you're constantly kind of above and off to the side of the character. But you can still always look in any direction. You can look behind you, you can look all the way around. But when the character runs up, it kind of slowly moves the camera with it. So the camera is moving with the character while you're still sitting down, which moving the camera without the player's kind of consent is usually like a no-no. But they found out a few things to kind of make it a lot more comfortable, but it still throws some people. And they also have problems with kind of framing things where they have to do it with the environment. So like right out the gate in Lucky's Tale, there's like a giant volcano in the distance and it's spewing kind of stuff and it's the biggest thing in your field of view and you're kind of down here on the coast of this island and this volcano's over there, so it kind of draws you want to kind of go that way, but also there's like nothing to either side. Like if you like turn around, it's just like open ocean. Like there's nothing there. You can't, there's boundaries. And if you kind of run left and right, the camera always stays back and facing that, and like if you move towards the camera backs up. Right? It's not like Mario 64 where it could wrap around you and face out over the open ocean. It doesn't do that. It just backs up and kind of keeps your focus on the stuff that's happening out that way.
Like Crash Bandicoot, basically.
Very much
Yeah,
like Crash
okay.
Bandicoot. So it keeps your focus in a certain direction.
Yeah.
And it only kind of moves in that direction, and very quickly, it's like, yeah, that's the only way you can go. You don't have free reign to just go anywhere you want.
That's the entirety of the game?
This is the
or
opening
just
scenario.
opening?
I only got to play like 10 minutes or so of it in Boston, and I've got it on my computer outside, but I haven't fired it back up because I only have the DK2 right now, but I was thinking about messing with it, even though I say it's not supported. But it's really interesting because they had to figure these things out. They made some mistakes. They were smooth. They were the first ones that kind of tried to figure out scale in 3D. We've talked about it too many times to even bring it up again. Like how big is Mario? Like, in reality, if you actually have to see him with depth and size. How do you move the camera around without making people sick?
That's like a thing. I just want to harken back to, just because I had mentioned earlier in the cast, there's another element to that Dark Souls made me realize recently was, I do think about that a lot. Like when you go to make a game for the first time, like a 3D game, I remember the first time I ever did that, I was sitting there, I was like, all right, I was gonna make the room I was sitting in, and then I was like, how big do I make stuff? Well, how big are game units? All right, so a unit in Unity space is 2 feet. So this desk is 6 feet. So I'll make the desk 6 feet. And if you make everything to scale, it doesn't work at all. Like, if you go by foot for foot measurement and to translate it into virtual space, it doesn't work like that. Like,
it can.
If you look at BioShock, everything's fucking huge. Like, if you actually look at where, like, your perspective in that world and you walk up to objects, you realize they're comically huge. But that's necessary, because then you're digested in your brain differently. But the literal interpretation of it is, like, important. And that's a thing in VR, and I realized in playing Dark Souls also, it's not just about the scaling and the pixels and all that. Also, how you use your space is a big part of how it I guess how it feels in the way that scale and depth give you can also be changed through gameplay and the framing of gameplay, and that can go a long way. Sorry, that was a tangent, but I just wanted to make that point because it was like sort of an epiphany I had this week.
It is interesting because that's a big thing that you can get away with. Again, there's in the 80s and early 90s, everything's 2D. You can get away with just, this is the screen, period, end of story. Like the UI's up in the top left. This picture will take up this amount of the screen. That's it.
And we will now kill you 100 times for no reason.
When you go into 3D, like Mario 64, like that goes out the window. Like, where's the UI? Where are you looking? What are you showing? Are you going to show all this stuff in the world? Like how
things
far,
are coming at you from all
far
angles
away is it?
Yeah.
Like, how do you turn it around? Like, what if something's behind you? All that kind of stuff like that. They had to relearn all that stuff. And VR's the next step further was, even if you do that, now what's all around you? How far away does it look? How does it feel? Feel is a big thing. Like, people use the word presence a lot, but also feel. Like, one of the interesting things you can see out of the first wave of VR games come out, almost every game has a rating of, like, this game is an 8 out of 10. It was a lot of fun to play. And then they have a comfort rating of how comfortable was it to play this game. Because certain people are more or less susceptible to motion sickness. Mm-hmm. And some people, this one might be like, you'll see a game that's like, this is medium. Like, if you're good in, like, a racing sim, you'll be fine in this one. But if you get queasy, don't play it. Or, like, this one's a seated experience where your character stays put for the whole time. It's comfortable for everybody. Or it'll be like, this is extreme. Like, you're, like, swinging on ropes and stuff. And unless you're a hardened, like, you've been playing VR since DK1, like, don't touch this one until you're ready.
Yeah.
Like, because they have, some of them just really just will make you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So the fact that you have to factor in not only what you're showing the player, like 2D to 3D, now you have to factor in how the player is going to feel when they experience that content physically.
Yeah.
Like, is it going to churn their stomach?
Yeah.
Is it going to make them feel nausea? Is it going to make them feel vertigo?
Is
it going to make them feel like they're about to fall or they're about to fly? Some of it's good. Some of it's not all bad. Like, is it going to make you feel euphoric? Is it going to make you feel like you're flying or, like, doing something very interesting that you wouldn't normally do? Like, if the roller coaster is a perfect example. Like if you put somebody on a VR roller coaster demo, one of the things that a lot of people get, some more than others depending on how deeply they feel the engagement, is when you go over that big drop, you can get that stomach drop feeling you get on a roller coaster, and people have that visceral reaction. I've seen it over and over again where I put somebody in the VR roller coaster and they're like, oh, this is cool, they're looking around, it's like tink, 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 they're going up, oh yeah, look around, you can see that castle's over there, that's cool, tink, 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 they're going up, and then it's like, oh, what's going on over here? Oh, I don't see the track. Oh, wait, what's going on? Huh? What? Oh, wait, what? Oh, shit. Oh, and then they're like, what?
You're just sitting in a chair in a room, right?
Yeah, they're just sitting there, and they're like, what? And like I've seen people like reach out and grab tables, or like, I've seen people have like really visceral reactions to these things that, if you're playing, I've never seen anybody do that if you're showing them like a character on a roller coaster in like Gears of War third-person game, or even playing Super Mario when you're going down the slide. I've never seen people be like, what? Like, oh shit. Like, they're still kind of separated a little bit. So it's not all negative. It's there's some good things you can elicit from it as well.
Right. But we don't know it's another like language thing. We've got to build the vocabulary all over again.
Right, and so the roller coaster was kind of like a no-brainer, right? It's a physical response that people have to that kind of having a sense of height and then being kind of pulled over the threshold, like along with something. Mm-hmm. There's another game that I've mentioned here before. It's called skydiving, where it's
wonder what that's about.
It's skydiving in the middle. It's sky DIEVIN. So you actually it's a skydiving game with no parachute.
Oh, you did.
Yeah, we mentioned this before. Same thing, but now this one doesn't have the roller coaster car around you to frame your perspective and to kind of see where you're going. You're kind of like floating around. Beyond the fact that some people just don't jump, they're just like, yeah, I'm set. Nope. Some people get weirded out like in the air. They're like, I don't know how I'm feeling, like or whatever. It's kind of weird. It's a weird one to play. There's another game come out called Windlands where you play a bird, where you can kind of soar around like this crazy eagle bird character. And a lot of times when they get people to play it, they'll blow wind in their face, or like they'll like set them up to like maybe you can lie down and put your arms out, and like you can use that to kind of steer, and it creates these other feelings and experiences on top of just the graphics and the music.
What's going to be interesting to me is I feel like the thing that really puts a good game over the top is that like way that motion and like mechanics, like everything kind of moves. You want everything to move on an arc, like an almost like exponential curve or sine waves. And I feel like the better that is, like there's just like a really good sweet spot like that you can get on just I guess like a screen. And I feel like that thing that is so important to making a good game on a flat screen is the most dangerous thing in VR, which is like. It's kind of like, it's weird. I feel like there's like a very fundamental, crucial part of games that makes or breaks a game almost, that is now really dangerous and almost maybe even a thing you can't do anymore. Or at least you certainly have to be more careful.
I mean, you can do, like, horror games are going to be brutal. Jump scares.
I will not play them.
Jump scares and environment.
I already
do
not,
exactly. How they like set stuff up. The fact that not only just the extra level of immersion, but like you said, like these games get the best benefit when you play them alone. Yeah. Like sometimes you play Resident Evil, or not even that those games are super scary, but some of the original ones they set up, they try to be a little bit. Yeah. I remember playing the original Resident Evil like by myself at like 2 a.m. in like a dark basement, like with all the lights off, like on purpose. Like I'm gonna get into this.
That's the only
or like the first time I played Dead Space, I turned everything off in the house. So I was like, if it's gonna be dark and quiet, because I heard that like the atmospheric sound was really good in that game. I was like, I cranked it all up. I got it all really loud, and I posted up and I played it in the dark by myself, and it was a very interesting experience. Well, VR is basically that. Without having to go through all the trouble of running around the house, turning all the lights off.
You can do it in the middle of the day.
I could be sitting in the park and
that's a really good point.
With that over my head with some noise canceling headphones.
Sitting on a park bench.
That's coming.
Sorry, I'm playing Slender.
That's coming. Somebody's gonna be sitting on the train, like on the subway, just being like, "Oh shit!" Rip off their headset in a cold sweat. But yeah, that kind of stuff it's interesting, but those games, and just like good movies and good books and comics and all that, pacing is a big part of it, right? So if you just did the roller coaster demo and the whole thing was just a drop, you'd stop feeling it. Like if the whole game was all, if The Walking Dead was just an hour of them sitting on a minigun just cutting zombies in half, there'd be no tension. There'd be nothing to it. Like you have to have the ebb and flow. You have to have a build up, a kind of a climax, a come down where you have like a relaxation period, a safe space. Almost all good games do this, where like after you kill a boss, you get to like save the game, you get to kind of regroup, get your gear back together. They wait a little while before they throw another one right at you, unless it's like the end of the game and it's like a rush or something.
Right.
And so that pacing becomes all that much more important when you're feeling it. You have to make sure that people get a chance to breathe and a chance to come down. Right. Whereas, like, if it's just jump scare, push you off a building, people are just be like, screw this thing. Like, forget this. Like, this, I can't be bothered. I've got other stuff to do. I'm not trying to just get my heart pressure up for no reason.
Yeah. That's very true. Like, it just... I mean, you probably have to have a lot less jump scares than you... Whereas...
Jump scares are almost like... You can probably get away with, like, one or two, but if your game's known to have, like, a ton of them, you're going to get some, like, enthusiasts that'll go through it.
Right.
But most people are just going to be like, I don't even want to deal with that.
Yeah, I wouldn't, yeah.
I mean, was it Ben Kuchera on Polygon? I point to that all the time, where he started playing Alien Isolation and the Rift, like, to review it. And he's like... He basically wrote a review being like, this is, like, half a review. Like, I tapped out. Like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, it's not fun. It's not fun anymore.
Right.
It's not fun.
Yeah.
Like, when I come around the corner and the alien sees me, like, I've gotten to the point where I just, like, close my eyes and turn my head and just, like, wait till it's over.
Yeah.
It's like it's too scary. It's like,
this is like a video game writer. This is a guy that has been playing games all day, every day for Polygon, which means he's been doing it a long time.
And he's got access to like the best VR stuff.
Yeah.
He's been a big VR kind of advocate since like very early on. Like he's been introducing it to people and writing about it quite a bit. And so it's not like he's a noob to like the experience, but like there's certain things he's just like, nah, like if this is the glimpse of things to come, like there's gonna be some horror games that are just for like a really, really small set of people, and everybody else just needs to stay the fuck out.
Yeah, basically people that are like missing something in their brain that it doesn't. That's the only people that can play it.
You're alienating that listener base there.
Yeah,
we're down to 2 now.
Isolating. You did it.
I did not. Yeah,
you did.
I'm just going to say one more thing about the VR, just to bring it back to something else, talking about the scales and stuff. So I just recently updated all of my Oculus things to the consumer versions of everything. So I've got Oculus Home, I've got Steam VR, I've got a bunch of their free demos, like their configuration stuff, which is pretty cool. I saw, the Portal characters pop out and talking to me with all the furniture falling in through the floor and like setting up the room in Valve's thing. I also checked out Oculus's Dream Deck, which is a demo that I have not seen before in any of the stuff that I'd seen, it's basically 30-second demos of various scenes that they're putting in front of you just as examples of like, this is what you can do with VR. And I didn't know what to go. And I was like, yeah, whatever, this is good. I'll see some cool shit, whatever. I found it really interesting from just like a designer standpoint, and I think you guys should check it out. Like when we're done here, it's like 8 little 30-second demos, and you can go back into any one of them and just spend time in there. But they're all standing still. You're supposed to do it standing. You're all in one place. There's no flying around. There's no moving. There's no nothing. But it'll put you on an alien planet with like a 4-foot tall alien like standing right in front of you, just like making faces at you and like saying stuff, and you're like looking out and you can see out into the galaxy or whatever, and then that fades away and it comes back up and you're in like a hyper vibrant low poly like foxes and bunny rabbits and like super cutesy and happy, but like everything's made out of like 4 polygons. Ooh. And it looks really cool, and you're kind of looking around at that, and then it fades out and it comes back in and you're like in some hyper real like super high def like museum, and a T-Rex comes walking around the corner down like this big open hallway and starts walking towards you, and some cool stuff happens there, and then it fades out and it fades back in, and you're basically standing over what amounts to a table with this whole little city laid out on it, and like little helicopters coming in and like little fire engines and like going and they're running around, they're all doing stuff, and it makes it feel like it's the exact opposite. It's like this very big to like this very little. Where now you're in VR, but you can see everything's very small. It looks like a big play set, and you like I could see that like being for SimCity type stuff, where it could be fantastic, where you can just play with these little. It feels like you just reach out and grab that little helicopter and move it, and it feels like it's like this. It's like an inch tall, and it's like all these little toys kind of flying around you, and it seems like the coolest little toy set ever. And then it fades out, and it does this a few times, and it just to kind of show off. I thought it was just going to be cool environments, but really, like I could see what each one is.
It's like the breadth of experiences, right? Like,
right. They're just like you could do it like this, you could do something like this, you could do something like this. And just kind of like set the seed, so set the hook. Be like, oh, maybe you didn't think of making, Train Simulator 2016, but you could make it like it's a train set the size of your basement. And you can move the things around, and you can make them. You could make them very small and make you reach out and play with it.
I think people are really like they think VR. Like I actually had this come up when I saw my brother over the weekend, the one that lives far away, I don't get to see often, and he's like, yeah, I don't think I'm really going to get into VR because I don't like first-person shooters. And I was just like, that's actually like a horrible application for VR, and that's like it's not what it's about at all. And I think that's what most people...
doesn't really work very well right now.
Yeah, exactly.
The other stuff works a lot better.
Yeah, but I think everybody, and he's like he plays a lot of games. Like everybody, that's just the assumption, right? Is everybody's thinking it's going to be like first person shooters and first person. I think there's a very narrow assumption of what VR is right now, but the reality, it's good to have like this thing where it's like it's not just that. Like it's there's a lot of different possibilities in how you can do this. It's not just about walking around a room. Like you could have the diorama table. You can have all kinds of like low poly worlds.
Looking forward to hooking up fantastic contraption around here. Build some stuff out. And,
so we'll have to stream that too.
You did remind me. I did play some more VR games.
Oh yeah.
In between our last talk, I was thinking the last time I played was like budget cuts and stuff. I played since. I played like the Valve demos that they have. Like they have a bunch of mini games. Some of my best VR experience so far.
The lab.
Yes.
So I spent the better part of my afternoon last night trying to get the Razer Hydra to trick my computer into thinking it's Vive wands, so I could play the lab. I have another line to test after I go back out there.
Yeah, because you were saying you play the Valve. I'm like, do you hear Vive yet? No.
No, I don't have it, but I've got Steam VR all hooked up and recognizing my DK2 and recognizing some other things that I can play with. But anything that requires the hand controllers, there's supposedly drivers out now that allow you to use the Razer Hydra, which
cool.
I have.
That's good. And
it basically tricks Steam VR into thinking they're Vive controllers. Because at the end of the day, they work the same way. They're just wired.
Yeah.
So, yeah, go ahead.
So, yeah, all right. There's a spaceship game in there. I don't know the name of any of these. I'll preface it with that. But there's a spaceship game, and it's like a bullet hell game in a 3D space where there are just a bunch of enemies across from you shooting at you, and you have to shoot them. On a 2D screen, it looks incredibly chaotic and insane. What makes it so interesting is that like it feels like it actually is like an evolution of this genre, because like so you control the ship just with a hand, so your hand is the ship basically, and you're moving around because it's on the Vive, so you have the controller, and so there's all these bullets coming at you, and they're just like slow moving balls, and you just move in and out of them like freely. You can walk around, like move in a 3D space around them. Your ship automatically shoots as you move and such, so there's just like all these bullets like flying at you and all in different space, and you're like stepping in and out of them and like weaving in and out of them. It was just such a cool experience, like inside of that. Like I said, on a screen, it looked. I watched my friend play it first, and I was like, how the fuck is he doing this? Like, but then you're in it, and like I beat the demo on like the second try. I was just like, oh man, like it was so cool though.
Does the ship move 1-to-1 with the controller?
Yes.
So if you just like whip it to the side, the ship just whips with it.
I didn't whip
does it feel
too
like,
much. I like made it like an airplane.
Does
like,
it feel
kind of
like
intuitively?
Does it feel like it's on a stick, or does it feel like when you move your wand over here, it interpolates from that point? It's like a little bit behind. You're giving it a direction that it
moved
follows.
with me.
So it's 1-to-1. So
yeah.
So if you just like grabbed your hand and whipped it to your right side, it would just follow it.
It should. I didn't try like literally whipping it as hard as possible, but because like in my head I'm like, oh, it's gotta move like a ship, and you're just you automatically start doing that. But I'm sure you could have. Because I
Yeah, I'm not one of those people that like picks up a game and just wants to break it every way they can think of.
Yeah.
I actually hate. I don't even. I don't even really design around that attitude to games. Like, if you want to do that to my game, I'm not gonna waste any time stopping you. Like,
fuck off.
yeah, just do it. Okay, like, you broke it. Cool.
In fairness, though, to move quickly, I probably did whip it to an extent. I never had any issues, so because like sometimes I'd probably be like, oh shit, bullet, and like move quick.
Yeah, I saw some of that lab stuff. There's also like a solar system thing where you can like grab the planets and like move them around.
I didn't do that one.
Organize them and like.
I didn't do that one. The other one I did 2 more. There's one that's like an Angry Birds one, like a first-person Angry Birds. So like, there's these personality balls like from Portal or whatever, and you're just launching them at these objects, and you have to cause as much destruction as possible. And that was kind of neat. It's a nice sense of space because you're just like, hey, I'm just going to use this giant slingshot. I'm going to have to back up in the room and just launch it, and it just looks really cool. That one wasn't as compelling. The other one I did, though, that was really cool was the shooting gallery with the bow.
Oh, yeah.
The bow felt so good.
And that's kind of cartoony, where like they pop
yeah,
out.
It's just little like paper guys or whatever, and they're all running around. Like, so at first you're just like, man, I'm terrible, but like, it's such a good feeling mechanic that as you go and progress through it, you intuitively get better at it. It's like if you're really like target practicing or something, because eventually you're just making these insane shots, and you're like, yeah, I'm fucking awesome,
Mm-hmm.
and like you really get into it.
Have you seen any of the stuff that Luke and Anton from Rust have been doing?
My buddy downloaded it. He was telling me about it because I've seen Anton posting about it, and deving it and stuff. I didn't realize it was out. My buddy was like, "Oh yeah, your guys that you used to work with at Rust or whatever, like they put out a thing." I haven't tried it yet though.
Yeah, I'm
but
really
I love that
intrigued.
now. I saw this week he added that the cartridges have actual physics on them now, so now you can like load a gun just by slamming it on the table and stuff.
Yeah, I've been following some of the work that they've been doing and on Twitter and pinging them when I like what they're doing, because they're doing really cool stuff. Like, they did one. He posted one where he basically modeled an M16, an AR-15 or whatever. But he didn't just do it in the typical thing like, here's a model, and when I pull the trigger, it shoots.
Yeah.
No, he did a thing where it's like, here's the model, here's the fire selector, here's the safety, here's the magazine release, here's the the charging rod that you have to like rack it back to chamber around. There's like another like scope on the front of it you can take off or put it back on, and he's doing it all in the setup where he's like, you pick up the gun, you got to pick up the magazine, you slide it in, you lock it in, you have to pull the charging rod back. It's like, that's a trainer. Like he's basically he ticked all the boxes of, if you actually went to like a real gun range and you wanted to fire one of these things, those are the things you would do, and you'd have to do it. And he made it look very easy and intuitive and whatnot. And he'd already done like a whole bunch of like little guns where he's like, I got a little sawed off, and you crack it open and the shells pop out. You put the new shells
you got to put them in and stuff.
He had like banana grenades that he was throwing. It was like bananas. You just throw them out there, they blow up. He did a really cool one on dynamite, where he had modeled some dynamite with wick like coming out the end of it, and he had a lighter that you could like flick it open and like and flick it, and it would light.
I did see the lighter.
And you had to hold the lighter to the wick, and it would light it, and then as it went down, then you throw the dynamite and it would go off. But like the wick had like a bunch of little spring joints in it, and so you could whip around and see the wick whipping around. And he's like, it even works like if you take the lighter and like light it closer to the dynamite, the rest of the wick falls off and it lights it there and goes in, and he throws it out. He's really very, very cool stuff.
Those guys are super talented.
Yeah, I think they put out a game. It's really like a demo set right now, as far as I understand it. But they're continually building on top of it like every day. I think it's called like bananas and hand grenades or something like that.
Hot dogs, horseshoes, and
hot dogs, horseshoes, and hand grenades. I think that's what it's called.
I think his hashtag is like H3VR or something.
Yeah, because there's the hot dog's another grenade or something like that. It's another explosive weapon or something like that. He's just building out crazy stuff, and he's been doing it for a while. But now he's putting it all together and putting it out. It looks super cool. Like, it looks really like intuitive and fluid, and he's got things built into it where targets will pop up, and then you can try to shoot them with all the different weapons or try things out. And yeah, it looks really slick.
Yeah, I haven't tried it yet, but my buddy Justin did download it, so I'll be trying that sometime soon.
Yeah, get the Vive over here, or get these Hydra working, give it a whirl for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because I definitely dig what those guys are doing with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, lots of cool, crazy stuff to come soon.
I also did some demo. I was out and just like, there's like a cave around me. I like break it out and I'm in like space. It was really surreal. It was really nice. I feel like VR is going to have some nice applications for like meditation and stuff.
Yeah, I think like Anthony said that the other day. He's like, I just want to like take a nap in there.
Yeah.
I just want to go into like a sweet space and just like chill out.
Yeah, like I'm just breaking it out and just hanging out in space, and my buddy put on like this really like soothing music and stuff. I was like, oh, this is so cool.
Yeah, that's actually, I didn't think about that. That's probably...
Yeah, there's a thing
I
called...
think that'd be a really good application for this stuff.
There's a thing called virtual desktop that's been around for a long time, and it was always a little janky, a little wonky. It didn't really bring a lot to the table, other than the fact that it was cool. It was a cool idea. But the dude who's been making it, I think it's one guy that's made the whole thing. He's been working on it like a lot now that the consumer versions are coming out, and he added a lot of new stuff to it, a lot like crazy environments and like more support for different aspects and setups and moving things around and setting them up around you, so you can actually use your computer.
Oh yeah,
VR.
Justin's got that too.
Yeah,
yeah.
And
I know what you're talking about.
yeah, so I thought it was always more of a cool idea than like what an actual thing.
You tried to play Dota on it the one day.
I actually played Dark Souls 1 on virtual desktop. It worked.
Yeah, no, I mean it streams your desktop into
Yeah.
it. You know, it'll work. But it's interesting, yeah, because sometimes people use it to just watch streaming video,
Yeah.
or even like streaming 3D video. You can potentially like cram it in, although it's a little weird. The one problem right now is the fact.
Let's just cut to the chase, guys.
The one thing that it's lacking right now is that it only can, since it is like virtualize your desktop, it can only display screens for your physical screens. So if you have 3 monitors, you can have 3 monitors in virtual desktop, but if you only have one, it'll only have
But
one.
I think if you just plug in a wire, like,
you can
that's enough.
you can spoof one of but your graphics card needs to have the outs. If you plug in a wire to the graphics card and tell the computer that there's a monitor there, I swear it, there's a monitor there, you can get one more.
That's pretty good.
It'll spoof it as a VGA display.
Good.
You can get one more.
I was about to start complaining about the future for a moment there.
Well,
technology's stupid.
But the promise of it is there, where it's like you could potentially have it where you have no monitors, and they're all virtual. You could have you know, the architect from the Matrix room where 1,000 monitors all the way around you and using all of them like in your complete space.
It would just be so weird to see a computer desk with no monitor. You know, and it's just like there's just a desk with a computer. There's no monitor there.
Just like a little headset,
just a headset
and a keyboard.
Probably, it's probably the future.
Can't wait.
I just love how you said it so fast. Yeah, it's probably the future.
I guess that's it. Guess we're stuck here.
Bullshit. I don't think monitors ever going to completely go away, but their usefulness will fade with things getting better and faster.
Yeah, there's
other things out there like the Magic Leap and like other things that, you know, if those get small and fast enough, there's not going to be need for a lot of this other stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
Where if especially for the people that just use their computer to check their email and shit, like they're not going to need all that other shit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a fine way to wrap her up.
The future sucks.
The future is now.
Really cool.
That's why I'm not going.
Yeah. Wait, what?
We got the jam tonight. It's going to be sweet. We're going to make some fun stuff. Hopefully the same time on Monday. I'm playing some cool things were made in 48 hours over here at the game space.
Yeah.
Maybe something VR. Who knows? If I can get the stupid Hydra to work. Well, actually, I have the Hydra working in my development stuff. I just can't play other things with it, like the lab. But yeah, very cool stuff. Thanks, guys. Anything else?
Also, check out our Buffalo Game Space on Twitter @BuffGameSpace, BuffaloGameSpace.com.
And there's a Facebook group there somewhere too. Go check that out. Like it. Follow us. Join up as a member. Sweet stuff happening here. See you guys around soon.
See ya.
Take care.